Welcome to the Pixel Club practice paper 1 for the Edexcel linear specification foundation tier for the June 2013 season. Okay. Now here you have your formula sheet, which only has a couple of formulas on it, one for the area of the trapezium and one for the volume of prism. These don't come in handy very often, but if you do find a question that involves a trapezium or a prism, just take a look. It may be useful to help you. Okay. Moving on to question 1. Now question 1a is about measuring a line. Now if you are doing the full A4 copy of this, then your answer will be 7.8 centimeters. The way you do that is you put your ruler with 0 at A, and then you see where B is on the ruler. So it may be 7 centimeters long and then 8 smaller graduations. That means the millimeters are long. So 7.8 centimeters. You could also write 78 millimeters, and that would be fine as well. So answer in the answer box, 7.8 centimeters or 78 millimeters. Okay, so marking on the midpoint of the line, it will be halfway between 0 and 7.8 or 78. That'll be 39 millimeters or 3.9 centimeters, and your cross is going to be approximately here. Ooh. Okay. It needs to be exactly in the middle. It's a bit difficult to do on this system. Moving on to question 2. Write down the reading of the scale. Now with scales you just need to understand what the smaller graduations are. So obviously the big graduations are going up in tens, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, but then halfway between each 10 would be 5. So we're looking at halfway between 60 and 70, which is 65 kilometers per hour. Okay, moving on to the weight of Sam's dog. Well, clearly this is higher than 3 and less than 4. Okay. According to this scale, the weight of Sam's dog is going to be 3.8 kilograms. Okay, because it's 3 big graduations and then 8 little graduations, and obviously there's 10 between 3 and 4, which means it's going up in 0.1. Now the question isn't asking for the weight of the dog. The question is asking for the difference in weight between Sam's baby brother, who's 5 kilograms, and Sam's dog. So we just need to do a subtraction. 5 take away 3.8, and that's going to give us 1.2 kilograms. Moving on to the next page. Okay, so here we have question 3 about pictograms. Pictograms are very common questions on the foundation paper, and also a nice place to pick up some easy marks. Now we're looking at the number of apples that Sharif buys. And if we look at the key, it states that four little squares making one big square is 8 fruits. So there's 2 lots of those for apples, which means there's 8 in the first and 8 in the second, meaning 16 in total. Okay, the number of oranges he buys is a bit more complicated because there's 3 big squares, which means it's going to be 3 lots of 8. 3 lots of 8, which is 24, and then a little square, a quarter of a big square, is going to be 2, so we're just going to add on 2. So 3 times 8 is 24, add 2 is 26. Okay. Now, question C is asking us to complete the pictogram with Sharif buying 12 peaches. We need to work out how many big squares that would be. Well, because we are using 8 fruits per big square, well, that's going to be 1.5 big squares. We could also think about it as the little squares being 2. So if one big square is 8, then we need to add on 2 and then add 2 again, which means we're looking at 2 little squares and 1 big square. So draw in a big square and then 2 little squares. Okay, moving on. So question 4 is about reading timetables. This one specifically is a bus timetable between Shotton and Alton. Now if a bus leaves Shotton at 7:30, then this is where we're starting from. It's this bus here which goes down. Okay, at 8 o'clock it's the next bus, and 9 o'clock is the next bus after that. What time should it arrive in Alton? Well, if we go all the way down and we look at Alton, it says 8:30 in the morning. That's our solution, that's our answer. Question B, how many minutes should it take to get to Hexham when it leaves Prudhoe at 8:28? So we look at where Prudhoe at 8:28 is, and that's this one here. How long does it take to get to Hexham? Well, it gets to Hexham at 8:45. So the difference in time there is going to be 8:45 take away 8:28, and we just need to do that calculation. 45 take away 28 is going to be 17 minutes. Okay, moving further down. Serena lives in Crook. She has to be in Hexham by 11:15. Okay, so we need to see which buses will get to Hexham before 11:15. Well, Hexham is this line here. So 11:45 is the last bus, and that'll be too late. So we need to go to the bus before, which is 10:45. Okay, so then if we are going to get on the bus at Crook, then that's going to have to be 10:15. So 10:15 will arrive by 10:45, which is before 11 or 11:15. So the answer to that will be 10:15, and that's that. Okay, so question 5 is about bar charts, another fairly simple frequency chart. We're going to just move up so we can see the question. Right, how many students said a rabbit has been their favourite pet? Well, look across to the rabbit, which is here, and the top of that bar takes you all the way back to 3, which means 3 students said a rabbit. 3 students. Which pet did most students say? Well, that's like saying what's the mode. The mode is the one at the highest bar, and the pet that is liked by the most students is the one at the highest bar. Obviously the highest bar is this one here, which is the cat. So we're going to put in cat as being the favourite pet. Okay, work out the number of students that Jessica asked. Well, that is basically the entire bar chart. So we need to work out how many students are asked for each animal. So the cat was 10, the dog was 6, rabbit was 3, hamster is 2, and goldfish is 1. So we add those numbers together. 10 plus 6 is 16, 16 plus 3 is 19, 19 plus 2 is 21, and plus the final goldfish is 22. So Jessica asked 22 students. Question 6 is about temperatures in cities. So we need to just make sure we're careful about what the question is asking us here. Sometimes we read that we're talking about the city as being the answer. Some people think the temperature is the answer, but in this case the question is asking write down the lowest temperature. Well, the lowest temperature is going to be this one, as -4 is lower than -2 and lower than -1, and obviously negative temperatures are much colder than positive temperatures, so the answer is -4 degrees. Question B is working out a difference in temperature between Cardiff and Plymouth. Well, let's just write down the two. Plymouth is 5 degrees, Cardiff is -2. The difference means one take away the other, so 5 take away -2. Well, when we take away a negative value, we actually add them, so 5 plus 2 is 7 degrees centigrade, or Celsius. Question C, work out the temperature which is halfway between -1 and 5. Well, let's find out what's halfway between -1 and 5. The easiest way is looking at a small number line at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Halfway between them is going to be 2. So the answer is going to be 2 degrees Celsius, or centigrade. Question 7 is about coordinates. So we need to make sure we understand how to do coordinates, and of course we always use the same rhyme: along the corridor, up the stairs, and that means starting at 0 we're going to go along the corridor and up the stairs to A. Along the corridor 1, so that's our first part of the answer, 1 across, and then up the stairs 1, 2, 3, 4, so 1, 4, up the stairs 4. Okay, that's probably the easier one out of these two. Question B is on the x-axis, which means you do still start at 0 and go across 1, 2, 3, 4 to B. Okay, so 4 across, but because we don't go up anything, we just write 0 because it's on the axis. Okay, the last part of this question is putting on a couple of points onto the coordinate grid, and the first point is 3, 2, label it point P. Okay, so going back, 3, 2 is going across from 0, 1, 2, 3, and upstairs 2, 1, 2, and that's point P. That's one of the solutions, one of the answers. And the next point is Q, which is at -4, 3. So that means we start at 0 and we go backwards 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And just double check the y coordinate, it's 3, up 3, so we go from that point -4, up 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be our point Q. Okay, and that's the question done. Right, move. Question 8, simple reflection. This is one of the simplest reflection questions you'll get. Now, ideally, you'd want to use a bit of tracing paper to check this, and what you do is you'd put the tracing paper over the diagram, and you'd trace the mirror line, and you'd trace the shape. Now, when you lift the tracing paper up and turn it upside down and put it back on the grid, put the mirror line exactly where it was, then you will see that the shape will then become moved to this point here. And what you need to do is either trace over the top of that line, and it will move over to the paper, or you can just take the tracing paper away and draw the line over the top. And this is what you're going to get. Now, straighten up a little bit. Okay, to make sure it's really clear. Okay, and that's what we're looking at. If you shade it in. Okay, so that's part A. Part B, draw the line of symmetry on this triangle. So, drawing a line of symmetry, that means that it's reflective symmetry, not rotational symmetry, which means that whatever we put on the line, it would be almost like a fold line. So if we were to fold the shape for that line, it would be exactly the same. Now, some people think that we do it like that, and like that, and like that. Now, if the triangle is an equilateral triangle, that would work. But because this is not an equilateral triangle, it's an isosceles triangle, it won't work. So we need to get rid of those lines, and we need to do it with just one singular line going up. Okay, because what's on the right hand side is exactly the same as the left hand side, so our line of symmetry is just going straight up. Okay, so that's that page done. Page 10, which is question 9. Okay, so this is a bit of substitution. We know that P equals 3n. So P equals 3 times the n value, but we know the n value, it's given to us here, n equals 6. So we're going to substitute that 6 into there. 3 times 6, and that's going to be 18. Okay, nice and easy to start with. For part B, work out the value of Q. Now we've got a C value and we've got a D value, we need to put it all in together. So Q equals 2 times the C value, which is 3, plus the D value, which is 2. Well, 2 times 3 is 6, plus 2 is going to be 8. That's going to be our solution. That's that question done. Question 10 is about angles, and the first question is about angles on a straight line. Okay, the question is asking, why is the diagram wrong? Well, the diagram is wrong because the angles should add up to 180. 120 plus 50 equals 170. The angles should sum to 180. Okay, simple question. Moving on to part B. This is now angles in a quadrilateral, so we need to remember that a quadrilateral, the angles add up to 360, but if you're unsure, chop it into 2 triangles, 1 triangle, 2 triangles, 2 times 180 equals 360. Okay, so we're going to do 360, take away the sum of those angles, 70 plus 130 plus 100. That gives us 300 degrees, so we take that away from 360, don't really need to write down because you should be able to do that. 360 take away 300 is going to be 60 degrees. So the answer is 60 degrees there. Okay, so that's question 10 done. Moving on to question 11. Question 11 is about money and specifically calculating with decimals, non-calculator, so we need to be doing column addition. Keith buys 3 pens. Right, there's 2 ways of doing this. One, 60p, 60p, and 60p. But actually adding 3 6s together will be the same as 3 times 6. So 3 times 60p would equal £1.80. Of course, that's 180 pence, but we don't write anything over a pound in pence, so it's £1.80. And of course, the answer box is asking for pounds as well. Question B. Someone buys a pencil case, a ruler, and a pen. He pays with a £5 note. So we need to find out how much it costs, and it's asking how much change we get. So we have to take that away from £5. So a pencil case is £2.70. All right, £2.70. The ruler is 45p, so 45p is actually 0.45 pounds, because we're just working in pounds now, and the pen is 60p, so that's going to be £0.60. So if we add those three together, 5, 17, and of course carry the 1 when we have a tens. 1 plus 2 is 3, so that's £3.75 in terms of cost, but we need the change from £5, 5.00, take away £3.75. Now some students will be able to realise that the answer is £1.25 straight off, but if not, you can borrow from the 5, and that goes over there, and that is 10 take away 7, but we can't do that yet because we need to borrow from that as well, which is 9, and then make that one 10. 10 take away 5 is 5, 9 take away 7 is 2, and then 4 take away 3 is 1, which is £1.25, as I said before. Okay. Question 12. Question 12 is about 2D representation of 3D shapes, and what that means is drawing the front and the side and a plan view of a 3D shape. Now what does this shape look like from the direction A? Well, you're going to see a shape that is three squares wide. Okay, you're not going to see this section here missing because you're going to be looking straight onto it, so it's going to be 3 wide, 1, 2, 3, and that section itself will be 1 square high. But then of course on the left hand side of the shape over here you've got a little tower, and the tower is 2 blocks high. It's only 1 block wide and it's right on the left hand side, so that tower is going to go there, and that's all you're going to see. Okay, ratios. Sidra and Gemma share £48 in the ratio 5:3. How much more money does Sidra get than Gemma? Now the best thing to do here is actually work out the split first of all. Well, if it's 5 parts to 3 parts in total, that's 5 plus 3 parts is 8 parts. Okay, so what is 1 part representing? How much is 1 part representing? Well, we do £48 divided by 8 parts, and that's going to give us £6 per part. So if 1 part is £6, and 5 parts will be 5 times 6, which is £30, and the 3 parts would be 3 times £6, which is 18 pounds. So the difference in these two, 30 take away 18, equals £12. Question 14 is simplifying algebra. 8x take away 4x. Well, if I was going to go the long way round, I could draw out 8x's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, if I take 4x's away, gone, 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 gone. That leaves us with 4x's. 4x. But of course we shouldn't have to draw all those out, because we can understand that we have 8 of them to start with, and then we take away 4. Right, when we multiply letters together, that's when we start using indices. Okay, so an example is if you had something times by itself, we often remember that squared. Well, this one's not times by itself, it's times by itself 3 times. So y times y would be y squared, but because we have it 3 times, it's going to be y cubed. The last part of this question is simplifying by collecting like terms. Now the like terms are the x's, so we've got 4x take away 2x, which equals 2x, and we've got 3y and 5y, which we're just going to do underneath, 3y, and it's add 5y, which is going to be 8y. Both of those answers are positive, so we're just going to write in 2x plus 8y. We could write the other way around, 8y plus 2x, but we generally write things in alphabetical order in algebra. Okay, so that's that page done. Question 15, probability. Okay, Emma has 7 chocolates in a box. 4 of them are white and the others are dark, so 3 are dark. Okay, it takes a chocolate from the box at random, and what is the probability it's a white chocolate? Well, there are 4 white chocolates out of 7, so that's simply the probability. 4 over 7 is a fraction. We don't need to change it into decimal or a percentage, we just leave it as a fraction. We don't use ratios when we're doing probability. Okay, the next question is, what is the probability that Emma takes a dark chocolate? Well, there are 3 dark chocolates in there, and it's out of 7. 7 in total. So it's the same as before, 3 out of 7. Okay, so that's that question done. Question 16. Okay, so Fiona says angle X is 150. Is she correct? Yes, she is, because opposite angles are equal. That is the rule. That's the actual word we need to use. Opposite angles are equal. It's actually vertically opposite angles, but opposite will do. And what this means is that if we have 2 lines that cross over, the angle on one side of the cross will be the same as the other side of the cross. In this case, it's 150. Moving on to question B. Neelan says angle Y is 40 degrees. Why is Neelan wrong? Okay, well, the best thing to do is take a little zoom in of this question here and change it into a question on a straight line. Okay, so there's our straight line. I'm just going to get rid of everything else here. We know that the angles on a straight line add up to 180. So if we were going to work out this angle Y, we would do 180, take away 150, and it equals 30. Okay, 30 degrees, which is obviously not 40 degrees. So the rule there is angles on a straight line sum to 180, and that will answer the question. Okay, and that question is done. Question 17 is about word formulae, just understanding the instruction that's given to you on a page. Now this instruction states that the total charge equals the number of photocopies times the copy rate. So for example, it could be 2p a copy, and then you multiply how many copies you have, or in this case the question is 6p a copy for colour copies. Okay, so the total charge for 15 colour photocopies will be total charge equals 15 copies multiplied by 6, which equals 90 pence. We can write that down here, 90 pence. It's already got p in the answer box, so you don't need to write the unit again. It's just 90, and then it's got p already given. Shams also needs 25 photocopies in black and white. The total charge is 75 pence. So if we write the formula out, the total charge is 75, and that equals the number of copies, 25, multiplied by the copy rate. That's the way they word it, the copy rate. Okay, so we can look at this question and think, well, what do we multiply 25 by to get 75? Well, most people who know their 25 times tables will realise that that's 3 pence per copy. But if you are unsure, then you can just do the division. So you divide both sides by 25. This is like solving equations. And that will give you 75 divided by 25 equals 3, which is what we already have. Okay, so this question is about fractions of amounts. It's also about a money problem, and we need to work out how much money is coming in when he sells books and how much money is going out when he buys books. Okay, so we're going to zoom in a little bit for space. Okay, we're going to start up here and write down how much money is going out. This is how much he is spending on the books. He buys 20 books for £2 a book. This equals £40. So his total cost is £40. Okay. Looking at his income, so how much money he's got coming in, he first of all sells half of the books, so half of 20, which is 10 books. He sells those 10 books for £3.50. That's £35. Okay, then he sells a quarter of those books, quarter of 20, which is 5 books. He sells those 5 books for £3, so we'd multiply it by 3 and we get £15. And then the remaining books he sells for £2. Well, if he had 20 books to start with and he sold 10 books and then 5 books, then he would sell a further 5 books for £2, and that would be £10. So the total income would be 10 add 15 add 35, and this would equal £60. So his profit would be £60, take away the amount he spent in the first place, which is £40. So profit would be £60, take away £40, which equals £20. Okay. Okay, question 19 is solving equations. Okay, so when we solve equations, we need to get the x's or the y's or whatever the letters are on their own, and to do this we need to get rid of all the numbers. Now the first number we're going to get rid of is add 1. To get rid of it, we take it away. We do the opposite. If we take away from one side, we must take away from the other, and that's going to give us 4x, because that's not been touched, equals 8. Okay, 9 take away 1 is 8. Now we have 4 multiplied by something is 8. Okay, well, if we do the opposite of multiply, we divide, we can see that that's just going to leave us with 1x, and we divide 8 by 4 as well, and that leaves us with an answer of 2. So we write in the answer 2. Now, with a question like that, you may well look at the question at point of 4x equals 8 and realise that the answer is 2. That's absolutely fine. Okay, question B is slightly different because we have a take away 1 here, so we have to do the opposite. We have to add that 1 to both sides. Add 1, add 1. 2y is untouched, and take away 1, add 1 becomes 0. 12 add 1 will become 13. Okay, so 2 multiplied by something equals 13. Well, the way we do that is we divide both sides by 2. We divide 13 by 2 there, and that gives us 6.5. But you could leave your answer as 13 over 2 or 6.5, it wouldn't matter. 13 over 2 or 6.5. If you can't convert to a decimal, don't worry, just leave it as a fraction. Okay, that's our page done. Now we are on to some number works, specifically indices. The square of 6, well, square of 6 means 6 multiplied by itself. That's square of 6 equals 6 multiplied by 6, which is 36. Now that comes down to times tables. 2 to the power of 4 means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 again is 8, times 2 again is 16, so that equals 16. Moving on to part B, this is a bit of negative number calculation, some call it directed numbers. We have negative 10 divided by 5, well 10 divided by 5 is 2. But when we have a negative number divided by a positive number, that remains negative. Okay. The second part is negative 3 multiplied by negative 4. Well, 3 times 4 is 12, it's the easy bit. Okay, then what do? We have two negatives. A negative multiplied by a negative is a positive, so we just leave it as 12. Okay, now when you are multiplying and dividing, you can use the little rule where you have negative and a positive equal a negative, positive and a negative equal a negative, but when they are the same, positive and positive, that equals a positive, and negative equal a positive as well. So some people refer to that when they're doing multiplying and dividing negative numbers. Okay. Okay, now on to questionnaires. The questionnaire questions usually revolve around looking at a question and seeing what's wrong with it. Okay, how many times do you go to the cinema? Not very often, sometimes a lot. Well, those tick boxes are very unspecific. Not very often to some person means differently to another person. So the boxes are not specific. The options are not very specific. Another problem with this is that it doesn't say a time frame. Now there's no time frame, it's what I'm going to write down, no time frame. What I mean by that is that, does it mean how many times you go to cinema in a week, in a year, in a month? It's just unclear. If you were looking for a different option because you couldn't think of those two, well, one of the problems is it doesn't have any option for if you don't go to the cinema. So there is a never go to the cinema option missed out. And we say 3 omits, which means left out, omits a never option. But you only need 2 of those to get the 2 marks, so it's just something to be aware of. Design a better questionnaire to find out how often adults go to cinema. Well, we want something along the lines of, how often do you go to the cinema? Go to the cinema. But we need to add a time frame, so maybe in a month, to the cinema in an average month. Not every month is the same. Okay, then you need your response boxes. Now we need about 4 boxes would be okay, I think, and we could just draw these as little squares, and we could say 0 times, so that's the never. Then we could say once or twice. We can have another box that says 3 to 4. I think if you're going more than 4 times, there's not going to be many people, so what we do with the last one is say 5 or more. Okay, that question is done. Okay, so we're going to start off with a stem and leaf diagram. Now, it is important to look at a question like this and realise there is a space and there is a grid for the stem and leaf diagram. The space is to be used to put the numbers in order. Now, the easiest way of doing this is doing an unordered stem and leaf diagram and then putting the numbers into order. So we're just going to make this a little bit bigger, and we're going to create our stem and leaf diagram. So using red pen, we are going to create a stem and leaf diagram starting off with 10, 20, 30 and 40. We don't need to go any higher than that because there are no more numbers higher than the 41. So to put the numbers into the stem and leaf table, first of all we have 11 right at the top, so we're going to put that one there with a 1. So that means 10 and 1, 11. We're going to go on to 36, 3, 6, 36, 23, 28. It's always helpful just to put a line for the numbers so we know that we've used those and we don't double up on them. 36, 40, 31, 13, 26, and so on. Now you might notice I'm trying to do this nice and tidily so the numbers are in line with each other. It is important to keep a stem and leaf diagram nice and tidy. You will lose marks if this is not done. Okay, so now this is done, what we need to do is transfer this information onto a stem and leaf diagram in order. Okay, now you noticed I put in my stem 10, 20, 30 and 40. Well, you can just do 1, 2, 3, 4 as long as you allow for this in the key. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then of course we have the numbers 1, 3, 8 and 9. That's in order in the 10. So 1, 3, 8 and 9. Okay, in the 20s we have 2, 3, 5, 6 and 8, 1, 6, 6, 6, 0, 1. Okay, so that's obviously the stem and leaf diagram complete, but as my mum used to say to me when I was a kid, don't leave home without your keys, don't forget your keys. We can do that. We can just take the maybe the 31 from the third row down, and we just say 3 line 1 equals 31. Now this does refer to number of flower buds on plants, so we could put in the key 31 buds. That question's done. That's the 3 marks. Next thing we need to do is write down the mode. Well, we know that the mode is the most common value, so we just look at our stem and leaf diagram. We should be able to see clearly that the most common value is 36 because there are 3 6s there. Okay, so 36 would be our mode there. 36 buds again if you like. You won't lose the marks if you don't write buds there, but it's being complete. That's that question done. Nice start to the paper. Okay, so moving on to question 2. Question 2 is a straightforward long multiplication question. Now there's several methods for doing this, and it's important that we recognise that all methods are fine as long as they work and they're accurate. Okay, so I'm going to be working with the grid method because it's one of the most commonly taught in schools. That's going to be 400. What we're doing here is we're breaking the 423 up into 3 columns, and the 12 turns into 10 and 2. So we need to now do a multiplication. 10 times 400 will be 4,000. 10 times 20 would be 200. 10 times 3 would be 30. 2 times 400 is 800. 2 times 20 is 40. 2 times 3 is 6. Now we need to add these numbers together, all 6 numbers. Now that might be worthwhile just thinking about the 2 numbers above each other. So we start off with 4,800. That's quite a nice, easy one to add together, 4,800. Then we've got 240. That's obviously the 200 and the 40 added together, and the last one is 36. Doing it this way means we're not trying to add together lots of different numbers all in one go. So if we now just add those together, that's going to be 6 in this column, 7 in this column, 10. So what we do is put the 0 there and carry the 1, and 4 plus 1 is 5. So the answer is 5,076. So I'm going to come over here, 5,076. That's it, that's your 3 marks. Now you just need to be careful with these questions. It's quite common for long multiplication to go wrong because people aren't careful, they don't think about the techniques, but bear in mind you do long multiplication all the way from year 6, if not year 5. So you should know how to do it, you need to make sure you do it carefully. Okay, question 3. Here we have a forming and solving equations question all about quadrilaterals. So we're just going to look at these first of all. We've got these angles in here. Now they don't have numbers apart from one of them, the rest they're all algebraic, so what we need to do is just think about adding those together. We know that when we find the sum of angles in various shapes, we know the total. For example, a triangle adds up to 180. This is a quadrilateral, as it states. A quadrilateral adds up to 360, so we're just going to write in 360, and of course that is going to equal all the angles added together. So 2x plus 2x, and move along a bit, plus x plus 10, and then last of all add 50. Okay, so they're the 4 angles. Now all we need to do is just simplify that. Okay, so we have 2x, 2x and x, so that is going to equal 5x. We'll put 5x down there, and then we had the 10 and the 50, so that's going to equal 60. Okay, they still equal 360. So that's our equation in x for the angles in the quadrilateral. That's what they're looking for. Okay. The next thing they're asking us to do is work out the value of x. Okay. Well, that basically means solve the equation. Okay. Nice and simple. 360 equals 5x plus 60. So if we solve this equation, we need to start thinking about getting the x on its own. We need to get the x on one side and numbers on the other. To get rid of that x, we need to first of all take away this 60. We do the inverse. The inverse is add 60 is take away 60. If we do it to one side, we must do it to the other side for it to remain balanced. If we take away 60 from both sides, that leaves 300 on this side. This will equal 5x on this side, because the 5x is not touched. That doesn't affect. It is not affected by the 60, but the 60 take away 60, well, that's gone, that becomes 0. Now we've got the calculation 300, or the equation 300 equals 5x. Okay, so we still need to get rid of something. We need to get rid of this 5. Well, 5 times x is the same as x times 5. The inverse of x times 5 is x divided by 5. So if we have a times by 5 and divide by 5, they will cancel each other out. But we must do the same on the other side. We need to divide by 5 over here. So x is going to equal 300 divided by 5, which equals 60. Okay, and that's the value of x. That's our answer that we want. Okay, so obviously I haven't filled all of this in. That needs to go in there, and that needs to go in there. Those are our answers. Okay, so here we have a recipes question. The recipe is obviously for 6 people. It's a melon sorbet for 6 people, and Terry wants to make the sorbet for 18 people. So we need to work out what the mapping is to go from 6 to 18. What calculation do we do to go from 6 to 18? Well, this is fairly simple. It's just times by 3. So we would do this with all the ingredients as well. Now, because we start off with 100 grams of caster sugar, we multiply that by 3, and we get 300 grams of caster sugar. 300 grams. Okay, moving on. Headley makes melon sorbet as well. He uses 2 limes. How many people is he making the melon sorbet for? Well, we can look at the original recipe for 6 people, and we've got half a lime. So we're going to write down half a lime, and that's going to be scaled up, or it's going to be mapped to 2 limes. So what calculation is that? Well, you need 4 lots of half a lime to get 2 limes. So we're multiplying by 4. So we know that from the recipe is for 6 people. We're going to multiply 6 by that scale up amount, that 4, and that's going to be 24 people. Okay, 24. Right, now moving on to a scatter diagram question. Scatter diagram question is talking about the height and length of sheep. And the first thing we've been asked to do is plot 2 points on the scatter diagram. The first sheep is 65 centimetres high and 100 centimetres long. So just go up to the scatter diagram here. 65 centimetres and 100 centimetres is going to be about there. Now that's slightly off because of the pen used to plot this, but that's basically about where it's supposed to be. You will be allowed some margin of error, but not a lot. The next one's 80, height and length 110. So 80, 110 is going to be there. Okay, again slightly off, but it's good enough. Right. So those are the 2 points. That's our 1 mark for that. Now we need to describe the relationship between the height and length of the sheep. Well, basically when we talk about relationships on scatter diagrams, we could discuss about how the height increases, so does the length, or we could say one value increases, another value decreases on a different type of scatter diagram, but ultimately we can see it's going uphill, and so we're going to talk about correlation. And the correlation here is positive correlation, so we write positive correlation. And that just means there's a relationship. As one value increases, so does the other. Now the last part of this question is the height of a sheep is 76 centimetres. Estimate the length. Well, we use the scatter diagram to do this, but it's really important we do one thing before we try and do the prediction. We've got to draw in the line of best fit. So many people forget to do that. So the line of best fit is just a line that goes through as many of the points as possible. It doesn't have to go through any particular points. It doesn't have to have a particular number of points above or below the line, and it certainly doesn't have to go through the origin, but we need to have a straight line. This is quite difficult with this machine. We're going to just have a straight line going through the points like that, preferably done with a ruler, and then what we need to do is find our value that we're checking out. So the height of the sheep is 76 centimetres, so what we need to do is a line straight up at 76 on the graph. So 76 is here, go straight up, and at that point we need to cross from there all the way across to the other axis. Now that isn't particularly straight line, again it should be done with a ruler, and that would give us 106 to 108, probably more like 108. So we're going to write an answer of 108. This is going to vary slightly between papers. It does depend on how accurate the line of best fit is and how well it's read off, but there will be an allowance for slightly different answers. Okay, this question here is going to be quite tricky to do because it does involve you using a pair of compasses which I cannot use on this tablet, but what we can do is talk about how to do it. So first of all, we need to set our compass to a certain size. Now if you notice, it says that the shopping centre will be built less than 12 kilometres from Middleton. Right, well 12 kilometres on this scale is going to equal 6 centimetres. Okay, 6 centimetres from Middleton is about here. No. Okay, so what we need to do is set the compass point on Middleton and set the compass to 6 centimetres long, and we're going to draw a curve from about here, and it's going to be, I need to turn the pen on, there you go, from about there, and there's your curve. Now I apologise, this isn't the greatest curve, I've done it without a compass because of the software as I mentioned, but that is supposed to be done with a compass with a centre at Middleton. Now from Newtown it mentions it's 15 kilometres, so we need to work out the scale that we're going to use. 15 kilometres, well, if it's 1 centimetre to 2 kilometres, that means we are going to do a line 7.5 centimetres long. Okay, so again, centre of the compass at Newtown, and it's going to be 7.5 centimetres, it's going to take up to about there, and then it's going to be a curve from there. Okay, again, the line's not particularly accurate, but the point is there. We have two curves, and where they cross, now we're looking for the area where the shopping centre can be built. Well, less than 12 kilometres from Middleton is this direction from there, and less than 15 kilometres from Newtown is there. So it's going to be this section in the middle. Okay, and that's actually the question complete. Okay, question 7 is all about the cost of buying gas from different companies. We're going to look at 3 different companies, and you can see down in the table below the graph there is 3 different companies: North Eastern, Pacific and East Anglian. We're going to work out how much it costs to use 100 units and how much it costs to use 200 units for each company. I'm going to start off with North Eastern. Okay, so North Eastern. Well, North Eastern basically have a basic cost of £30, but then there's nothing added on, because if you look at the actual table here, it says first 200 units free. So whether you use 100 units, 200 units, it's all free. It would cost more money after that. So North Eastern straight away is just £30. Okay, Pacific is a bit more complicated because it's 20p every unit. So we're going to move on to the next page. Okay, so we're going to start off looking at the Pacific company. So Pacific, make sure we're clear about which company we're looking at. Right, so Pacific is 20p times the number of units, 20p multiplied by 100 units, which equals 2,000 pence or £20. Okay, £20. And then 20p multiplied by 200 units, which is the other extreme, and that's going to be 4,000 pence, which equals £40. Okay, so that's Pacific done. So we're going to move on to East Anglian. Okay. Ooh. And now we're looking at a start-up cost of £10. Okay, plus 10p per unit. So we're going to multiply that by 100. And that will equal 10 plus, well, 10p times 1,000 is £10. It's 1,000 pence and £10. So that's going to be £10 plus £10, which is £20. That's for 100 units. And if we do that for 200 units, so that's going to be £10 plus 10p times 200, which is 2,000. 10p times 200 is 2,000, but that's £20, so that's £10 plus £20, which equals £30. So it gives us our two extremes. Okay, so we can now look at the between £20 and £30 for East Anglian. We can look at the between £20 and £40 for Pacific, or if we go back to the initial company, which was North Eastern, it would be a basic cost of £30, whatever. Okay, so first of all, if you use Pacific, it's going to go up to £40, which is more than the other company. It's more than £30. So Pacific will be more than North Eastern for the higher amount. Okay. So at this point, the North Eastern company is cheaper. So if we compare the North Eastern North Eastern are £30 standing, but East Anglian will be less than £30 for anything under 200 units. So East Anglian will be less than North Eastern for anything other than full 200 units. Therefore, East Anglian are the cheapest company for Erica. Okay, so here we have some angles and polygons. We need to start looking at the internal angles or the interior angles of polygons. We've got two different shapes here. We've got the six-sided hexagon, so 6 sides there, and we've got the 8-sided octagon. Alright, so how do we find out what the internal angles are? I mean, obviously we're looking for X, which isn't part of the shape, but we will use the angles, and I'll show you later how we can find this out. So first of all, we're going to zoom in a little bit onto the hexagon. Okay, so we're going to split this hexagon into 4 triangles. Okay, those 4 triangles each have 180 degrees in them, as in the 3 corners of each triangle add up to 180. So if we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles, we have 4 times 180, which is 720 degrees. Now that amount is the total internal angles of a hexagon. If we want to know one angle of a regular hexagon, we just divide this by the number of corners there are, number of vertices. So divide by 6, and that equals 120 degrees. So each angle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all add up, all have an angle of 120 degrees. 120 degrees. Okay, we use the same process on the octagon. So this is the octagon here. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay, and we're going to split it into triangles. Now we just go from one point again, and that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 triangles. Okay, which means that if we just move that across a little bit, we've got 6 times 180, which equals 1080. And then to find out what one of those corners would be, we do 1080 divided by the number of corners, which is 8, and that would give us 135. So just move that over and write in 135. So let's take a bigger view of the picture. Okay, we've got here 2 polygons, and we're going to zoom in onto the X, the area we're trying to find. Now I'm going to go right in to avoid any confusion from anything else. Okay, so we've got the 120 degrees on that, on the left, the upper left, and here we've got 135, which we just calculated. Okay, so 120, 135, and the X all make round a point kind of angle. Okay, so round a point, the angles add up to 360. So what we're going to do is going to add together 120 and 135. That's going to equal 255. We're going to take that number away from 360 because they add up to 360. 255, and that's going to give us 105 degrees, and that's going to be the value of our X. So we can write that into our answer. Is there an answer box? Well, we can write down at the bottom X equals 105 degrees. Now it's always worth checking to see if that makes sense. Let's have a quick look at the angle itself. Well, the angle there is clearly bigger than a right angle. A right angle is 90 degrees, so just bigger than 90 degrees is fine. 105 degrees. Okay, next question. Okay, so here we have 3 different shops selling trainers, and we need to work out how much each trainer costs. It's asking us to see where the best deal comes from, but we can't just write down the name of the shop. We need to show some working as well. Alright, let's start off with the left hand side, the Sports for All trainers. Okay, it's starting off with £5 plus 12 payments of £4.50. So let's work out what 12 times £4.50 is, and that's going to be £54. Okay, and we need to add on the initial £5, so 54 add 5, that's going to be £59 in total. Okay, next we're going to look at Edexcel sports trainers. Edexcel sports trainers, 1/5 off £70. So we need to work out what 1/5 of £70 is. Well, this is going to be a different question, so we need to separate them up. 1/5 of £70, we'll divide 70 by 5, and we're going to get 14. Right, so that means the price that the trainers have been reduced by is 14. So if we take the initial price of 70 and take 14 away, that's going to give us the price £56. I'll put the pound sign there. I didn't realise space over here. This one was cost 59. I'll write that again. Right, moving on to the last one. Keith sports trainers, £50 plus VAT at 20%. So we need to work out 20% of £50. 20% of 50. Well, 10% of 50 is going to be 5. 10% equals £5. 20% is just double that, which is going to be £10. Okay, so £50 plus the VAT of £10 is going to be £60. Okay, so the question does say which shop would Samantha buy trainers to get the best deal, so we need to say, let's just zoom in a little bit and make a bit more space. We need to say, well, the cheapest here is clearly going to be the £56 in the middle. So £56 in the middle comes from Edexcel sports trainers. The cheapest deal comes from Edexcel sports trainers. Nothing wrong with referring to the actual amount as well. Let's put in brackets £56. Okay, that's 5 marks. Bearing in mind you get marks for all the work in there, not just for the statement at the end. Okay, next question is about algebra. Just nice expanding brackets, so let's just zoom in on the brackets to make it a little bit easier. Okay, we're going to start off with x multiplied by x. Multiplying out brackets is the same as expanding brackets. X multiplied by x is x squared. X multiplied by 5 is 5x. Negative 3 times x is going to be negative 3x. Now I mentioned a negative, that's because the other two are positive, so I should probably write a positive sign in there. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Okay, that's not finished, that's expanding, but it's not the simplifying. So if we simplify that, we get x squared, because there's no other x squared terms, then we get plus 2x, take away 15. That's going to be our answer. There we go, plus 15. Moving on. We've got a solving equations question. Solving equations means finding out the value of x. So the problem here is we've got a 4 on the bottom of a fraction. Now they're always awkward to have numbers on the bottom of a fraction, so we get rid of them first. Okay. If we're dividing everything on the left hand side by 4 at the moment, the opposite of that would be to times by 4. Now all this does on the left hand side is cancel out. Divide by 4, times by 4. Remember, of course, if we are going to divide or multiply by 4 on one side, we must multiply the other side by 4. Solving equations is always about doing the same thing to both sides. But if we multiply the right hand side by 4, we need to multiply all the right hand side by 4. So x plus 5 in brackets. If we do x times by 4, we get 4x. If we do 5 times by 4, we get 20, positive 20 of course. That equals 29 take away x, which is just what was on the top of the fraction before, the numerator of the fraction. Okay, now we have something a bit more familiar with. We need to make sure all the x has gone to one side. The lower value of x is over here, so we're going to deal with that first of all. We're going to add that, because it's negative at the moment, add 1x. We're going to add 1x over here as well. Okay, so the 29 is untouched. That equals 5x, because 4x plus 1x is 5x, and then 20 is untouched as well. Next stage, we need to get rid of the 20 because we want to get the 5x on its own. Take away 20, and we do the same to the other side. That leaves us with 9 equals 5x. Okay, last thing we need to do is get rid of the 5. Now at the moment it's x times by 5, so we divide by 5 and they cancel. Divide by 5 on the other side, and that gives us our answer, 9 over 5. Just write that one more time. X equals 9 over 5. So this question is about rotation. Now the problem with rotation is that we need tracing paper really to do it in the most easiest way. And what we would do if we had tracing paper is we'd trace the shape, and we'd also make a point that we're looking at the centre of rotation at 0, 0. We'd then put our pen over that point and turn the tracing paper, rotate the tracing paper at 90 degrees clockwise. Now that's going to bring one of the corners down here, another corner there, another corner there, and all the tracing paper will do is just show us where it's going to be, so we still need to draw in the shape. This is where the shape's going to go. Okay, that's it, 2 marks. If you are unsure if you've done it enough, then you can just do a little line between corresponding points and the centre of rotation, and then you should just see that's a 90-degree angle. That means it's rotated 90 degrees. That's it.